What's up, guys? Today we're going to be checking out a pair of subwoofers. These are the Ascendo SV-12s. So shout out to the folks over at Ascendo for sending this over for me to review. Thank you, guys. If you had missed the 80-inch subwoofer that I did a few weeks back, you can find that on the channel. I'll leave a link for that video down below in this video's description. Obviously, this is a lot smaller than the 80-inch subwoofer, but I'll be curious to see if this has any kind of similarities with the big one. Right on the top, we have the subwoofer's grill. Then we have the owner's manual, and we have the power cord. This is a fairly small subwoofer. It weighs 48.5 pounds. Size-wise, let's give it a measure. It measures approximately about 15 inches wide, about 19 inches tall, and it is about 15 3/4 deep. I'll put the exact measurements on screen. All right, so let's take a look around front. So this is the SV-12, so that means it's got a 12-inch driver on it. It's got the nice little Ascendo logo with the arrow pointing upwards, meaning Ascendo, not Ascendo. So arrow up means to ascend. So I'm going to take a guess and say the pronunciation is Ascendo. This is a ported subwoofer. It's got 2 ports, which will minimize port noise and turbulence. And the frequency response of this subwoofer is rated at 25 Hertz to 150 Hertz. But let's go ahead and spin this around back here. For a 12-inch subwoofer at this price point, it's pretty cool because it does actually have balanced XLR inputs. So if you do want to daisy chain this, there is also a balanced XLR output, so you can string another XLR cable over to a second SV-12 sub. Of course, it's got your unbalanced RCA inputs. This guy is the LFE in. It's got your volume knob, crossover, which is variable between 40 Hertz and 150 Hertz, phase, the on-off auto switch, and the power inlet. And then this amplifier is rated at 500 watts RMS. Now, as far as the grill is concerned, this is your standard little peg and then insert on the front. So you're just gonna stick it right into the little holes on the front there. So this is not magnetic, but it does hold on pretty securely. And the construction of this is pretty beefy as well. This is constructed of HDF, so high density fiberboard. None of that MDF, which is a lot thinner and lighter, so this has actually got some pretty solid build quality. This does not have the pebbled finish like the other Ascendo subwoofers that I reviewed in the past, the 18-inchers. This actually has a faux wooden veneer that wraps all the way around it. So if you like that wooden look, this definitely has that. So like I said earlier, I do have 2 of these guys. Let's go ahead and get this thing set up. For setup, I'll be placing the subs in my dedicated theater, each placed in opposite front and rear corners. I'll be using the features built into the subwoofer as well as their placement to get them integrated within my room. So no room correction in the processor, only levels and distances. For demos, I'll be using a Kaleidoscape and as a PD media player. Since I'd originally reviewed the Ascendo 18s a couple years back, I figured I'd play the same demos to see if they could live up to their bigger brothers. First demo we're going to check out is Midway. It's got this deep, pulsating harmonic tone around 30 Hertz that can sound overwhelmingly boomy on lesser subs. I distinctly remember what this felt like with the Ascendo SMS-18s. Those were so powerful they knocked the fan over and made my camera lens vibrate. It also must have blew off my hat as well. I don't believe I've had subwoofers do that since, and these little 12s didn't do that either. Not surprising since they are substantially smaller, but still, if they've borrowed anything from the larger models, is that they could still play extremely loud and clean without the slop or hollowness that you might hear with cheaper subs. Kind of like what you'd get with a subwoofer that would come with a soundbar. No offense, soundbar owners. Of course, the explosions hit with some serious impact and remained very controlled with a tight, swift attack during the aerial assault. Since these seem to be fairly punchy, speedy subwoofers, we're going to check out the Monopoly scene in A Quiet Place 1. There's a few snap-to-impact jump scares that are pretty impressive. What I like about these subs is that they remain silent up until they're asked to come to life, and they'll immediately hit you with that smack-in-the-face response. Like I said earlier, that attack comes swift and out of nowhere and doesn't linger unless it's in the mix. I still think the 18-inch models are more tactile and forceful, but given the differences between these two, these are no slouches. Alright, so these can hit hard, they're nimble, but can they go deep? Let's pop in Kong Skull Island next. This demo dips below 20 Hz, so let's see if these guys can keep up. Even the bigger 18-inchers couldn't do this scene justice. What you should hear, or rather feel, is the room vibrate every time the helicopter blades make a rotation. With the 12s, you can clearly hear the chopper blades, which does have a heavy presence to that response. You're just not feeling the air pressurize around you, which I've only heard on a couple larger subs. They're still crazy impactful when Kong is running or stomping on the ground, so if you're like me and have baseboard heating, you're gonna find those things rattling all the time. And last but not least, we've got to hear the Edge of Tomorrow. As expected, since these didn't go low enough for Kong Skull Island, they were definitely not hitting single digits for this demo. But what I wanted to hear was if they were going to bottom out or if I heard any kind of port chuffing, which I didn't. So kudos to Ascendo for putting in a capable limiter to keep the subwoofer from self-destructing. The subwoofer has its own limits and it sticks to it. Now, I did take a few measurements of my main listening seat. Keep in mind that these are the responses I got in my place, so they'll likely be very different for yours. The first one is of the sub in the front of my room, and the second one is of the sub in the back of my room. Together, I get a much cleaner response without the dips. I can of course EQ this flat with the room correction built into the processor, but this is just out-of-the-box settings using the features built into the subwoofers themselves without any external help. At the time of this video, the SV-12 is selling for $1,400. This is Ascendo's most budget-friendly subwoofer. Their other subs do cost more, aren't quite as living room friendly, but they do have a very advanced DSP. You can check out the video I did on the SMS-18 that tells you all about it. Link in the video description. I know I compared the 12-inch versus the 18-inch, which isn't a fair comparison, but they do share some things that I mentioned earlier. These had no issues filling my space with a very beefy, hefty response. I've had some subs in here that don't have that palpable thickness, but more of a light, airy, free feeling. I felt because these do have that heaviness to them, it really captures the atmosphere and some of that low rumbling you'll hear on certain audio mixes, which really does deepen the soundstage and pushes it outwards. It doesn't dig as deep as some other 12s that I've had in here, but the trade-off is that the mid-bass has more control and more of a harder hitting presence. I think because the enclosure is very dense, it helps with that tactile sensation, keeping any cabinet resonance from coloring the sound. If you must have deep bass, you can always pair the SV-12 with one of Ascendo's infrasonic subwoofers for that bowel-moving single-digit responses. We'll see, maybe I can get one of those big boys in here at some point. Not the 80-inch though. Now I do wish the SV-12 would have had the same DSP features as the more expensive models, but I understand that they wanted to keep this at a more attainable price point. The good thing is that you still get really good build quality, a solid 12-inch driver, and most importantly, great sounding bass from a subwoofer that doesn't take up that much space. Well, those are my thoughts on the Ascendo SV-12 subwoofer. Have you guys ever heard an Ascendo subwoofer? And if so, how do you think it stacks up to the competition? Leave your comment down below and let me know. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video if you found it useful. If you want, you can follow us on social media. And if you want to support the channel and get exclusive content, you can also find us on Patreon. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next video.